My dear Hunger Project family, I thank you so very much for being here this evening. Tonight, we find ourselves at a moment in time in which the idea of the end of hunger is becoming a finite reality. You see, ladies and gentlemen, that reality, that realization of a world free from hunger and poverty is now very much within our grasp. The Secretary General, he said that the Sustainable Development Goals represent the single most ambitious agenda in human history. And the world has signed on the end of hunger by the year 2030. That's something. We're there. African and Latin American governments have even taken it a step further by aligning on the end of hunger by the year 2025. On September 25th, I had the honor of addressing the United Nations Summit on your behalf and on behalf of all our partners on the ground. It was here that the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted. And it was here I told world leaders about the fundamental principle of the Hunger Project, empowerment. We know that when people lead their own change, just how extraordinary they can be. We've seen it over and over again, and we are absolutely committed to their success. Wherever you look, experts agree that technically and statistically, the end of hunger and poverty can be achieved. There are 216 million fewer hungry people in our world than there were in 1990. And since 1990, the proportion of people living in hunger has been nearly cut by half. And the mortality rate of children under 5 has been cut by more than half. And, listen to this, according to a recent report, this year, extreme poverty is expected to go to its lowest level ever, 10% of the global population. Yet, with all that, we know that ending hunger is not primarily a technical issue. It has never been. It is, of course, a human challenge. The truth is that 795 million of our human family still live in chronic hunger. And so it is our goal to ensure that as we enter into this new chapter, that we, the Hunger Project, do everything we can to ensure that no one is left behind. Another and perhaps even harsher truth is that as a global family, we have failed to empower our women. Some of our most pressing challenges, women's economic status, maternal and childhood health, or the invisible crisis of malnutrition, they can only be solved by the means of integrated strategies at the community level. You see, when people, both women and men equally, are mobilized to participate as active citizens in their communities, and when they act in partnership with effective, accountable local government, the transformation is profound. This is what is required if we're to achieve the end of hunger and poverty. At the heart of all the work of the Hunger Project is a holistic, bottom-up, sustained process. It's a process that allows women, men, and youth to take control of their own lives, to be authors of their own future. Using this approach, we've seen women becoming active leaders of change. We've seen them forming successful businesses, and they've done it by gaining access to education, training, and microcredit. And in a little while, we'll have the opportunity to hear from a courageous woman from Malawi called Tabitha, who is going to share her story about how she, in order to provide for her family, became an entrepreneur. We now see young people being included as active members of their communities. This next generation of leaders, with their energy, passion, optimism, and power, is our future legacy. We'll hear tonight from a passionate young leader from Bangladesh named Jannatul, who represents the youth who are being trained as active citizens and are initiating change in their villages. They are now addressing issues like soil erosion, child marriage, illiteracy, and lack of sanitation. And there are other voices being heard. They are the voices of indigenous women and youth who continue to be marginalized throughout rural Latin America. They are banding together to demand from the governments electricity in their remote villages. And they're taking ownership of the process by volunteering the labor to carry extremely heavy materials over some rocky and difficult terrain. Since we met last year, I've been traveling extensively. Everywhere I went, I saw vibrant, inclusive economies being created. In Benin, I had a wonderful opportunity to visit a small business organized by some of the villagers in Wawata epicenter. I was able to see for myself the many ways they're using the miracle moringa tree. Now, the moringa tree is very nutritious superfood. For the community, it's simply an old traditional tree that hasn't been used much lately. But they've now started to understand its value and using it to support maternal and childhood health. They've created what you might call a clean room process for drying the leaves of the moringa tree and crushing it into powder so it can be sold in the marketplace. They've involved a professional packaging partner to make the product marketable, and thanks to the sales, they're able to generate more income to their families. We're also seeing women becoming more efficient in fulfilling their roles in local government. The women leaders in India who have been elected to their village councils are forming federations and forums with other women in their communities to support one another in driving change. They discover the challenges that need to be addressed and ensure that the rights of women, youth, and elderly are upheld. They bring light to issues like gender violence, girls' education, access to sanitation, and to clean water. This transformation is only possible when we invest in approaches that support and encourage people to lead their own change. This, ladies and gentlemen, is your hunger project. So, what's next? At the country level and at the regional level, Hunger Project staff and volunteers have been extremely busy. They're tirelessly finding ways to expand our approach all over the world. For example, in Malawi, we organized the first live national television broadcast of the Sustainable Development Goals. We had a lively debate. It was co-facilitated by none other than our own country director, Roland Kaucha. Let me tell you, it was an amazing day. And along with the Malawian government and a number of organizations, we have now begun charting the path to a national focus on community-led approaches across the country. Now we know our influence is spreading when people come to us. For example, the Network for Empowering Women in Bhutan came to our team in India and asked us to train them in how to strengthen women's participation in the political process in their country. This training is now funded by the Swiss government. And just a few weeks ago, at the United Nations, we held a special meeting to launch a coalition of organizations to build the global movement for community-led development. We heard from government representatives, academics, funding agencies, and many other civil society organizations who all believe in the power of people to drive their own development at the community level. And there was a general agreement that big donor agencies rarely fund such approaches like you and I do as individuals. This has to change. Also missing is the sharing of best practices of gender-focused community-led development among the various organizations. You see, there is no common language, no framework, but this too is something we can change. This coalition as a whole intends to learn from one another and advocates for policies and budgets that will empower each and every community to take the lead in its own development. We're able to catalyze this movement. We're able to do this because we keep asking the critical question, what's missing? It's you who give us the opportunity to keep asking that question. It's you, investors and partners, who give us the freedom to innovate. We are determined, and we are very deeply committed to continue playing the highest leverage role possible to once and for all realize the end of hunger. And so we will keep leveraging our precious resources and strategic partnerships. We will continue to share our methodology of gender-focused community-led development, and we will influence others to adopt such approaches. Now you may hear all this and think, great, the job is nearly done. But if that's the case, you might think, what's my role? Well, simply put, right now is the time for each and every one of us to step up our action. The last part of any endeavor is always the hardest. Our energy cannot falter. It has to strengthen. Every single one of us has a role to play in breaking down the issues that have kept hunger in place for such a long time. For our partners, the people in the rural areas, this means taking courageous steps to build lives of self-reliance and dignity as they combat dependency, gender discrimination, violence, oppression, and take their rightful place as leaders of their own change. This means every level, each and every level of government being accountable to its people. For civil society organizations, it means standing for the rights for each and every human being and facilitating the formation of effective partnerships at every level. For corporations, this means taking sustainable actions and supporting vibrant, inclusive rural economies. And for individuals, like you, like me, it means standing shoulder to shoulder with our community partners as we invest in and champion the actions that keeps people at the heart of development. And to remain leaders in calling forth leadership from everyone. For all of us, this means believing, truly believing that together we can do this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our chance. This is our chance to invest in our shared humanity. Together, let us seize this opportunity we have right in front of us every day. Let us connect with our sisters and brothers who courageously face hunger every day. Every day, let us participate in bringing about change that once seemed unimaginable. Let us invest in gender-focused, community-led approaches that are creating positive change for women, men, and children worldwide. And every single day, let us be leaders in the achievement of the final end of hunger.